my name is Alexis Schomer. I will be giving this presentation on deliverable number 2 for managerial economics. I will be giving an overview of the presentation, talking about important definitions, and then I will be discussing the effects that scenarios 1 through 4 will have on the supply and demand for oil in the oil market. Scenario 1 is regulations that are passed which restrict drilling in many areas of the U.S. to preserve protected areas. Scenario 2, the U.S. has a large increase in birth rate and population. Scenario 3, a recession occurs. And Scenario 4, there's an increase in availability of affordable alternative energy sources. Then I will be giving my recommendation and summary. The purpose of this presentation is to determine events that affect the price of oil. I will discuss effects on the supply and demand curve, as well as effects on the market equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So some important definitions. Demand is the relationship between price and quantity that consumers are willing and able to pay. This is depicted as a downward sloping curve on a graph. Some determinants of demand include income, expectations, tastes, preferences, other goods, and other buyers. Supply is the relationship between the price of an item and the quantity that producers are willing to supply. This is depicted as an upward sloping curve on a graph. Some determinants of supply include input costs, taxes, subsidies, other sellers, other goods, and technology. Market equilibrium is the point where demand and supply intersect. The quantity of goods demanded will be equal to the quantity suppliers are willing to supply at a specified price. Scenario 1 is regulations are passed which restrict drilling in many areas of the United States to preserve protected areas. In this scenario, the regulations are going to affect oil company X, the producer and supplier, because it will be harder for oil company X to draw oil. This is going to cause a decrease in supply, so the supply curve, as shown on the graph, is going to shift to the left. When this supply curve shifts to the left, the equilibrium point is going to change. The equilibrium price will increase and the equilibrium quantity will decrease. Scenario number 2 is the U.S. has a large increase in birth rate and population. With this situation, more people would mean more people driving and a larger demand for oil. The demand curve is going to increase and it's going to shift to the right. The equilibrium point will also increase and equilibrium quantity will also increase. Scenario number 3 is a recession occurs. When a recession occurs, there will be an increase in supply because less people will be willing to pay the same price for oil because of the lack of money during a recession. The supply curve will shift to the right, and the equilibrium price will decrease and the equilibrium quantity will increase. Scenario number 4. There is an increase in availability of affordable alternative energy sources. Alternative energy is a substitute for oil. When oil prices rise, a decrease in demand occurs. The demand curve in this situation will shift to the left, meaning a decrease in demand. The equilibrium point will decrease and the equilibrium quantity will decrease. To summarize, I discussed various supply and demand oil real-life scenarios and effects that they will have on oil in the oil market. Scenario 1 was regulations that are passed which restrict drilling in many areas of the U.S. to preserve protected areas. This causes a decrease in supply. Scenario 2 was the U.S. had a large increase in birth rate and population. This causes an increase in demand. Scenario 3 was a recession occurs, and this causes an increase in supply. And finally, Scenario 4 was an increase in the availability of affordable alternative energy sources, which cause a decrease in demand. My recommendation is to not proceed with the construction of the pipeline due to the liability issues and also real-life events that would occur in nature in the construction of the pipeline. There is possibly unforeseen cost based on scenarios 1, 3, and 4. My resources were Managerial Economics and Strategies textbook,